Keith, how you feeling? Are you weary? Finally, it's over. You know, you can breathe.
Yeah, you know what? It was crazy because you know what, Mike. I mean, you remember the process, right?
Uh-huh.
And to me, it got to a point that this was worse than the process. It was like harder to watch at times, but you always knew that with the process, they had a future. You know, even though they didn't do everything right with the future, there was a future. And you're looking at this one and you're saying, man, I don't know how they're going to get out of this. I don't know.
Yeah,
So
but hold on, Keith. But rest assured, the general manager says he feels good about our guys moving forward.
Yeah, but you know what else is he going to say, right? You know, I mean, you know, when you hear people say stuff like that, it's always you know how it is. It's always whenever somebody has a surgery, it's always a successful surgery. And whenever someone makes a draft pick, they always say, "Oh, this is the guy we wanted." And then after a season, it's always like, we feel great about our future. You know,
no, I get it, and you have to wade through this propaganda like we all have to wade through. But let's just take it. It looks like they're running it back with the 3 stars. Now he promises that they're going to get younger. Instead, you know, he made all these misjudgments with older players, which I thought from the beginning was a misjudgment. He has made, and this whole front office has made so many mistakes. I'm stunned that the owner hasn't made him accountable, and he's going to bring back the same thing. Now, I know you're in a tough spot. Maybe you can't say that, but did it shock you that they're going to come back with the same outlook?
You know, it did, but it didn't, if that makes sense. And the reason being is, you know, when we look at it, they made a lot of mistakes, right? But this is also an era where you pass the buck. And we also got to realize that, you know, Josh Harris is the owner of the Commanders, and the Commanders are trying to get a new stadium in D.C. And how much, and then, you know, you have Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse with 3 years left on their deals. Same thing with Elton Brand. So it's one of those things where, are you willing to spend a lot of money to get rid of these guys, knowing in order for you to get out of this mess, I'm going to have to spend more money on, let's say they wanted to go after Bob Myers. You know, he's not leaving L.A. unless you pay him a lot of money. So when you factor in the fact that the Commanders need a new stadium, or they want a new stadium, and, you know, right now that team is the team that's trending upwards to whereas that's where the money is going to go to. And what you're going to do is you're going to give them a chance to say, hey, we can work through this and like take it from there. Now, the one thing is, it seems like there are going to be some fall guys in this, because what they're saying is they're going to evaluate the coaching staff, they're going to evaluate members of the front office, and they're going to evaluate the roster. So what that means is they're probably going to upgrade. They're going to make some upgrades there and make it seem like, okay, we got new people in place and we're going to move forward. But to me, the one thing that I will say that, you know, typically when a guy makes the mistake and you go out there and you get a Paul George, for instance, and he doesn't live up to his contract, you give Joel Embiid an extension and he doesn't live up to that. Typically, the president of basketball ops is a guy that's going to go. But you know, we talked about the other things that he's going to stay. But, you know, to my surprise, you know, in a perfect world, or not a perfect world, but if everything was equal, if this was the only team that Josh Harris had, if Daryl Morey wasn't under contract for as long as he is, you know, you would expect that Daryl Morey would have been the guy that goes.
Yeah, and here's the problem with that, because it makes the fan base feel even worse. It makes the fan base feel that the owner is detached from the entity. Like he's not following it closely enough. Like we are all fine. Like there's nothing wrong, and you come back with the same thing. Now, I don't know whether that engenders trust in anybody when it comes to this team. So, I get it, and they're gonna run. They have no choice at this point but to rely on the Embiid, George, Maxey triumvirate, and maybe some younger players, and maybe they have a new outlook, and maybe fans buy into it. But this is an absolute disgrace. And you said it. it's worse in the process. It can't be more of a colossal failure, and they're going to come back with the same failure people.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, because think about it, though, Mike. I mean, like, the reason I'm not so surprised, because think about this. You remember how when they wanted to go out there and they said we need shooters. So what did they do? They got Ersan Ilyasova and Marco Bellinelli. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden they lose in the second round to the Celtics. And it goes, well, you know what? We got to get tougher. So then they didn't re-sign the shooters, and they went out there and got physical guys. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, guess what? We need shooters again. So now it's like we need veterans to help us win a championship. Oh, well, that didn't work out, so now we got to get younger again, right? And part of the reason why they have to get younger, and they're talking about the guys that they have, is, let's be honest, in order for you to get you don't have the cap space. There's the second apron. You know, we don't know what Paul George is going to be like. We don't know what Joel Embiid is going to be like. Of course, at this time of the year, everyone is optimistic. But in order for you to go out there and get a difference maker, it has to be through the draft, which is going to be a young guy. But then again, these other guys that they're talking about, you know, like Justin Edwards and you know, Adem Bona, guys like that, they don't demand a lot of money. So you're basically getting what you can afford. Yeah. You cannot afford to go out there and get a veteran who's going to be a difference maker because somebody's going to outbid you. You just don't have the money. So to me, when we hear like, yeah, you're going to get younger, now again, Quentin Grimes, you're going to try to sign him, Yabusele, you are, but you can't go out there and get a guy that you're going to say, okay, this guy right now, we know that he's going to push us over the hump, because you can't afford it. All you can afford is young talent.
I got it. We're talking to Keith Pompey. He covers the Sixers for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and he's been freed. Although he's got the off-season stories that he's got to do, so he's still on call. Let's talk about the Embiid thing. Now, I don't know, Keith, you might have some knowledge that I don't have, but he had surgery, and he's expected to make a full recovery, and we talked about that principle earlier in this interview. But what is wrong? Have they said what they fixed or repaired or looked at, or like, it seems ridiculous?
Yeah, and no, they haven't. They haven't. They haven't been transparent at all with that, with the Joel situation. And the thing about it is, Mike, you know, it was one of those things where, you know, I need to have surgery. I need to have a long break. That's what he was saying, right? You know, he's telling people, leaking that out to people. The Sixers are saying he doesn't need surgery. You know, everything's fine. So next thing you know, when you're thinking surgery, you're thinking like, okay, they're going to do some real stuff. Not to say that the surgery he had wasn't real, but typically, you know, the surgery that he had is maybe they're doing something different. But typically, when people get that, they're cleaning out things. They're maybe doing minor things, to whereas you're only out 6 weeks. So we waited a long time for this guy to have this surgery. Whereas if it was just this simple, this is something he could have had in the beginning of the season, right? Or now, again, I get it. You know, he tried to play through it. He couldn't. But to me, it's kind of like, I don't know if this surgery is going to be the answer to what we saw he couldn't do early on. And if it is, again, why didn't you do it sooner, right? But like, as I said before, it's the end of the season, and whenever they have, you know, press conferences, especially when, you know, the fan base turns against you and everything, there's always one of those times where the general manager or the president of basketball ops are trying to convince you that they know what's going on, like, or they know that everything is going to be perfect when the guy gets back. But again, it's just like a hope. Like, it's just, you're just hoping and praying that everything is going to work out, because they don't know.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is. Normally you say, oh, yeah, we went in there, we repaired X. They haven't said anything, which means what they found was a degenerative condition that's never going to be improved. So I'm flabbergasted. I really am. I've never seen anything like this where people come back and they keep their jobs after they presided over such a mess. Keith, what's next for you? What do? You take some time off now?
You know, it's weird. Like I was talking to your producer before I came on. I was like, dude, I was thinking that I wasn't going to take time off because I was thinking I would be having to look for a new president of basketball ops and maybe a new coach. And now it's like I'm like, hey, I'm just here. So I'm just doing the end of season stories, and being a girl dad, picking my daughter up from practice and from school.
So they did you a favor by bringing back Maury and Nurse.
Well, yeah, I guess kind of, sort of, but kind of, sort of. But it's just bizarre because there's a lot of unanswered questions, and even after that press conference, I do not feel convinced that the Sixers are going to turn anything around. I just don't feel it.
I hear you, Keith. Always a pleasure, man. Take some time.
Thanks
off.
for having me on, Mike.
All right, man. There he is, Keith Pompey. He's the best.
Didn't really give us much positivity.
No,
there's no positivity to be had.
The team. There's like, what do you say? Like, how could you be misguided enough to think that they bring back those guys and they bring back the same front office, the same coach, that things are going to change? What is going to change? Is George going to get younger and more enthusiastic about playing here? Is Embiid going to improve? He's going to get healthier? No, nothing's going to change. 610-632-0975. Mike Missanelli Show continues.
Hey, everybody, it's Bill Colarulo. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel so you can engage during the show, and you're not going to want to miss all the content that we post. It's not only the live videos. It's videos after the fact. It's our shorts. It's all the content you want as a Philadelphia sports fan. Looking forward to connecting.